Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me for today's town hall. I'm Janice Scott, and as always, extremely proud to be your president and CEO, a position I'll be leaving at the end of June. I'm sure you've also seen the board chair's announcement, and I'm so pleased to transition my role to Gail Hunt, who will begin her position in early July. Before I begin today's town hall, once again, I want to express my deep thanks to Team RVH. This sixth wave is proving to be a challenge for us on a whole new level. The sixth wave has placed a heavy burden on all of you as you continue to deliver high quality care while at the same time coping with fewer hands to help and colleagues off sick with COVID or home due to an exposure. In fact, it's during this wave that we are experiencing the highest rate of absenteeism since the pandemic began. In the past week, we've had as many as 196 members of Team RVH off work. That represents over 5% of our workforce. This week alone, 80 members of Team RVH reported new COVID positive results. That's the highest week ever. But you don't need numbers to prove how critical the situation is because you're living it every day. I know this has added extra work and longer shifts for many of you. Please know your leaders are meeting daily and are working hard to fill the shifts and to get you the help you need. Special thanks to Nancy Savage, Executive Vice President and Chief Nurse Executive, for chairing these very important daily operations meetings that serve to share critical information right across the House. Who would have dreamed that this pandemic would be not just a marathon, nor a marathon where the finish line keeps changing, as I used to say, but actually now it feels like several marathons in a row. So thank you for running this race, and I know that we will cross the finish line together. Today we have an especially meaningful town hall as we step away from the pandemic for just a moment and focus our attention on RVH's ongoing commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Our Diversity Inclusion Council is launching the Inspirational Belonging campaign. This campaign features members of Team RVH sharing how they self-identify as well as their stories of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at RVH. So let me begin by introducing today's guests. No stranger to our stage, Daryl Sewell, Vice President Facilities and Chief Human Resources Officer. And we're honored to welcome two members of Team RVH featured in this campaign, Reverend Dr. Dwight Biggs, our spiritual care leader, and Tracy Holyark, the phlebotomist with our laboratory team. So thank you for taking the time to join me here today. And let's begin with Daryl. So Daryl, today you are here representing another very important role that you play at RVH, and that is the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Council. So before we get to the Belonging campaign itself, Daryl, can you tell us a little bit about the Diversity and Inclusion Council?
Thanks very much, Janice. The Diversity and Inclusion Council certainly has evolved over the past 5 years, shifting from primarily a membership of leaders to an open membership, where any member of Team RVH can join the council for one or more meetings, thus being inclusive of all. Our focus has evolved also from our 6 pillars or communities of interest, which were Indigenous people, Francophone, LGBTQ2+, seniors, youth, and a catch-all, a 6th category of a catch-all of social determinants of health, including BIPOC, food and shelter and security, etc., to then our new focus, which is on belonging, which embraces all people who come through our doors for care or to be a member of Team RVH, regardless of how they may self-identify. And we've tried to focus our efforts on education, advocacy, and celebration over the past few years. But we know as an organization, we have much more work to do.
Thanks, Daryl. And of course, you know at RVH, we have a very strong strategic pillar of value people, and this council does such critical work to support that strategic direction. I really want to thank you and Marla Thomason and others on the council, of course, for continuing to move this important council forward. So now, Daryl, let's talk a little bit about the Belonging campaign.
The creation of this campaign has been 2 years in the making, since the theme of belonging was first adopted for RVH at the council and then endorsed by the senior leadership team. And when I say belonging, I'm talking about all individuals who come through our doors, patients, families, community, as well as all members of Team RVH, including our learners. I'd like to start off today by sharing a very short video clip from Brene Brown on the topic of true belonging.
I was so shocked to learn in the research that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. Because fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What do I need to wear? How do I need to act? And changing who you are. And true belonging never asks us to change who we are. It demands that we be who we are.
So Brene's words are so very important. Fitting in requires us to change who we are, whereas true belonging demands that we be who we are. And when we can be who we are, then we are our truly and authentic and genuine best self. And in healthcare settings like RVH, we can then fully contribute and give of ourselves to our patients and families in delivery of care, and to each other as colleagues in the workplace. Belonging does not mean fitting in, where you change or hide who you really are to fit into the status quo. Belonging is the freedom to be your authentic, true self without fear or concerns of being stigmatized or even bullied. Actions, of course, that would never be tolerated at RVH ever. RVH strives not for culture fit, but instead for culture add. For RVH, we have identified 6 elements of belonging, and I just want to introduce each one by naming them today, with much more information to follow. Those 6 elements are comfort, contribution, connection, psychological trust, well-being, and identity acceptance. And we believe this campaign, which is a combination of posters and video stories, screensavers, and social media, they'll touch on all of those 6 elements. So to make the campaign authentic, we put out the call to all members of Team RVH to volunteer to share their belonging story. And today we have our first 2 courageous volunteers. It's my pleasure to welcome our first belonging participant, Reverend Dr. Dwight Biggs, spiritual care leader, and also an active member of the Diversity and Inclusion Council. Welcome, Dwight.
Thanks, Daryl.
So Dwight, can you tell us a bit about how you self-identify?
Yeah, thank you, Daryl. Good to be here. Good to be able to share a little bit of this story, because I'm sure many of you have seen me hobbling around the hospital with this friend of mine, my cane, and perhaps wondering what it's about. In 2005, I was diagnosed with a rare neurodegenerative disease called adrenomyelin neuropathy. And what it is it's basically working to shut down my body. And it's starting most noticeably with my legs. And so it's affecting the way that I walk, and it's causing me to have a disability in the way that I walk. And if you're wondering what it's like to have this disability, if you've ever been in a pool or a lake and you're about this deep in the water, waist deep or so, and you try to walk, that strain in your walking and not quite feeling like you have your balance, that's what it's like for me every day. And so that's what I identify with.
Thanks, Dwight. And can you share your belonging story with us?
For sure. So for me, my belonging story began actually even before I started working here on site at RVH. When I was thinking about my problem with walking and seeing where the staff parking lots were, I thought, well, I'll send a note to the parking office and see if my disability might be taken into consideration for where I could park at RVH. And I received this lovely email back from a person at the office saying, I have just the perfect parking spot for you. It's nice and close to the hospital so that you don't have to walk too far. And by the way, when you get here, let me know so we can get together, have a coffee. I'd love to get to know you better. Talk about feeling welcomed and feeling like you belong even before you get here. And then once I actually started working here on site, it meant the world to me that people were looking to see who I was as a person and looking past the disability, looking to see what it is that I might have to contribute to Team RVH. So again, I felt welcomed, feeling like I belong to this team and what we're doing here. And even in some ways, people recognizing that perhaps because of having this disability, it might inform our patient care in a different way. For example, by me being on the accessibility committee and having a different perspective on what we do in terms of accessibility around RVH. So a couple ways, different ways that I feel like I belong here.
Thanks for sharing those personal perspectives, Dwight. And my last question is, what are some actions your colleagues can take to participate in your belonging story?
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. I think there's a few practical things that my colleagues could be doing. And one would be as simple as, say, we meet up in the hospital somewhere and we're chatting for 5 minutes or so. If my legs get tired, maybe I need to lean up against something or sit down somewhere, simply taking that into consideration. Or another thing would be if we're walking together in the hospital, to remember that I walk fairly slowly. And so I always appreciate when people walk at the same speed as me, rather than walking at a normal speed. They're way ahead of me and I'm somewhere way behind yelling, "Hello, are you there?" So walking at my pace is kind of like walking in my shoes in a way. And I really appreciate that someone walks alongside me in my journey. And then I'd also say that what I mentioned before to remember to look past the cane, look past the disability, and see the person that's standing before you and what that person might have to contribute to your journey.
Thanks so much, Dwight. I so appreciate Dwight's comments about his coworkers seeing past his visible disability and accepting him for who he truly is. And that is what belonging is all about. So we're so fortunate to have Tracy Halkerd here with us, a phlebotomist who works in our lab, here now to share her belonging story. And welcome, Tracy. I'm going to ask you the same questions I asked Dwight. So can you start off, Tracy, by sharing with us a little bit about how you self-identify?
Hi. I lost my hearing when I was 18 months old, the majority of it through measles. And then unfortunately, over a period of time with chronic ear disease, I became deaf. So before I even began to speak or have any memory at all of what sound would be, it was taken away. So I was 40 years old, believe it or not, when I got an implant for the first time. And that was the first time that I heard the hearing world. So I am actually deaf, and with this lovely implant that I have 6% hearing. So it's very difficult to navigate through a hearing world as a person that really doesn't hear too much, even with the equipment that I have. And with my auditory nerve being 95% dead at this point, I don't know how many years left that I would have using an implant, and I would go back to a world of deafness. So I'm very grateful for the 6% that I have.
Thanks, Tracy. Can you share a bit of your belonging story with us as well?
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm new at the RVH. I've been here just shy of a year, 10 months. To come to a new job is scary as heck, as we all know. But to come into it when we're in a pandemic with masks is intimidating, fearful, because no one knew that I couldn't hear. And because I talked so well, people assume that nothing is wrong. But that's because I'm working around the clock to make sure that, you know, I'm looking all the time, I'm reading people's eyes, I'm looking around constantly at my landscape, and it's because I can't hear it. And that was really scary coming into the core lab and not knowing. By sharing to people one person at a time, and having the confidence to come out with my story, the resolve and the culture that's started within the lab for me is profound. It's a beautiful thing to walk in and people raise their hand, especially in core lab, and say good morning. It makes me feel fantastic because you're acknowledging me. And it's very difficult when you can't hear, because I can imagine what a lot of things sound like, but I don't hear them. So when you see someone's eyes at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're coming in on your shift and they light up and raise your hand, it's like, yeah, good morning. That feels amazing. For someone to just acknowledge so that I know that you're talking and I can be present, and it makes me feel included. You know, when I'm walking around the hospital and all different members of staff and all my favorite cleaners in the elevators, you know, you tap me on the shoulder, good morning, how's it going, how's your shift? But it's the acknowledgement and it's the movement. You know, to be invisible in a very difficult space with a disability can be very it can really play havoc with your emotions, because you're trying to juggle as many balls in the air, you know, be attentive to your patient, be there with your, you know, your coworker. But if two people are talking at the same time around my microphone, I can't hear anything. So as much as I'm wearing it with the intelligence of it, everything becomes inaudible, and that's horrible. But people here have opened their arms, you know, just revealing on what works for me, what doesn't, what's going to make a successful connection. And people have really taken it on the hip. And in 47 years, I've never felt welcomed like I have here. And there isn't a day where someone brand new comes up and we have a conversation about hearing loss, or they're going through a process in their life and not having the confidence to stand up, or just to take time just to have that pause, the power of presence. It's huge here. It starts with a seedling, and it's like 9 months ago it came with this tiny little seed, and now there's a garden, and it's just growing and growing and growing. And the relationships and teaching each other about what works for me, but also what works for you. What can I do for you to have a better presence with me? What can we do to build on things? So to be included in the ways that I have is just phenomenal. Somebody looking online and figuring out how to do sign language, you know, for my manager to do that. When she did that, it was a very emotional moment, because one, you took the time, you wanted to get closer to me, and you put in the effort, and it was effortless. And to feel included and received and have fun with it and not be so serious, it's a disability. But you know what? I have so many other abilities that it's okay to be different. And here is where the village starts. You know, how do you heal the world? One person at a time. It's the best place to be. There's nowhere else I would rather be.
Your story is a beautiful one, Tracy, and thanks for taking some time with us today to share it. I think you've touched on a few things, but are there any additional actions you'd want your colleagues to take to participate in your belonging? Anything else you wanted to share with us?
Don't hold back. Life is too short. You know, if there's something that you don't understand, or you think that I've heard something, or you've assumed something, if you look at my eyes, you'll know that I haven't picked it up. You know, a deaf person can always tell a deaf person coming into a room, especially in a patient's room. It's just, don't be shy. I know we live in a very politically correct world, but touch the shoulders out of me and raise your hand. And you know, eventually we might not have masks, and that would be amazing. But in the meantime, raise your hand, come up to me, introduce yourself if I've never met you before, share your story, and that's how you build relationships, and that's how you have community. Just don't be shy, present yourself, because I want to be present with you, even though we haven't met yet. So that's where it starts, just for coming forward.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Wow. Hey, is this wow? I think that's the symbol. I've learned something myself. Thanks so much to both Tracy and Dwight for coming forward and having the courage to come forward and share their personal stories with us today. It's really important for us to all remember that all forms of diversity are not as visible as others. Some forms of diversity are in fact quite invisible, but these individuals still demand that they be accepted for who they truly are. I want to take one last opportunity to share with you a recent advertisement from MasterCard that for me depicts just how much this world truly is changing for the better. Just going to cue that up, I think. Here we go.
Handing over my card makes me feel very anxious and nervous.
Just a total invalidation of my identity. I tried not to focus on that because it happens so often.
I used to have moments of anxiety and moments of panic.
It puts me in a place where I feel like I'm in danger. It just sucks every single time. They look at it and they look at you, and they look at it and they look at you.
Oh, is this actually you?
Are you serious? Oh my God. Stop. That's so cool.
That's incredible. That's who I am. That's who I actually am.
Yes. 2 weeks ago, the Bank of Montreal Financial Group became the first financial institution in Canada to implement the True Name feature by MasterCard. This enables transgender and non-binary individuals to use their chosen name without the requirement of a legal name change. I'm sure you could sense throughout the advertisement the profound impact this change has had on members of this community. So before I turn it back to you, Janice, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to a few folks who have been involved so closely with the Belonging campaign. Special thanks to Marla Tomlinson, my incredible senior administrative assistant, for helping me with every aspect and detail of the campaign and the Diversity and Inclusion Council work. To members of the council themselves for bringing forward and supporting the Belonging concept, thank you so much. And to two members of our amazing communications team, Joe Miller for his videography, and a special shout out to Denise Philpott, who not only did the photography and the video editing, but also listened so closely from the very beginning to what it was that we wanted to create and bringing this Belonging campaign to life. Her creativity and talent is so evident, and we're so appreciative. Thank you for offering the time today, Janice, on this important topic. We're just so proud of this. Back to you.
Yes, thank you, Daryl. There are so many proud moments in RVH, but projects like these, philosophies like these, courageous people who feel they belong at RVH, these are the projects and the initiatives that make me so proud to be your president and CEO. What we want to, what we are sharing today, is the culture that we want at RVH. We want everyone to feel they belong, not that they have to fit in. And it's not something to which we pay lip service. We're committed to this culture, and as such, it's my privilege to announce that RVH will be recruiting our first Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. It's a big step forward, And Daryl will continue to play a key role, but he, among all of his responsibilities, we're now going to have a director with a focus in this area, working along the entire senior team, of course, including Daryl. Now, the demographics of our region and our workforce are changing rapidly, and this commands a leader dedicated solely to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at RVH. And I really want to also thank Dwight and Tracy for sharing so honestly your experience. And again, just that sense of belonging before you arrived and when you arrived and not wanting to work anywhere else. I mean, that's how we want people to feel at RVH. That is our responsibility. I understand the council is hoping to have 5 or 6 Team RVH members share their belonging stories, with a new poster being released every month over the next year. This is an exciting campaign and a true reflection of the culture here at RVH. So we invite all Team RVH members who wish to share their stories of diversity and experiences of belonging at RVH to contact Marla Tomlinson. And again, Marla, special shout out to you for keeping all of this moving so very smoothly. Today's conversation has once again reminded me of the strength and the power of this team, and it's truly what has gotten us through the pandemic. As always, though, I would like to end our time together with a letter from one of our grateful patients. This one recognizes the exceptional care provided by our cancer team and Dr. Jessica Singh. Dear RVH, at the end of September 2021, I completed 2 years of immunotherapy for melanoma, which had spread to my lungs. My oncologist, Dr. Jessica Singh, gave me a feeling of comfort at a time when my wife and I were very concerned. Her caring and gentle manner made things feel not as scary. In addition, Dr. Singh, the nursing staff on the chemotherapy floor, were an excellent team who were never too busy to answer our questions. They always went out of their way to make sure that we felt cared for. So now 2 years later, after my treatment, my PET CT scan and a follow-up CAT scan showed no signs of cancer. I'll always be grateful for the care I received at RVH. Thank you, Ben and Maggie Kay. So thank you and congratulations to Dr. Singh and of course the whole team who provided exceptional care to this patient and his family. Under the heavy burden of COVID, Team RVH, you continue to show compassion and kindness to our patients, their families, caregivers, and of course, each other. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Your hard work does not go unnoticed, and I know it has been really tough. So until the next time, Team RVH, stay safe and stay strong.